Hello, Chef Tom here. Today we're going to talk about food cost percentage and how to determine a selling price. Knowing your food cost percentage and having the correct selling price is very important if you want to stay in business. Doesn't matter how good your food is, or it doesn't matter how much business you're doing. If your financials are not in order, then you will not be able to keep your doors open for very long. A lot of different food establishments live and die by their food cost percent. Also, as a chef, I've had several times in my career where my bonus has been determinant on what my food cost percent is. So having a lower food cost percent will get me more money. The lower your food cost percent is, the higher your profit can be. In this video, we're gonna mainly be talking about the triangle. So at the top of the triangle, you have a cost per portion, and then at the bottom, you have the selling price, and then in the bottom right, you have the food cost percent. By knowing two of any of these given items, you can determine the third item. They are all linked together. So food cost is the total amount of food items purchased for food production. It does not include things like labor or utensils or utilities or fuel. Food cost can be expressed in several different ways, whether it's a single item like a steak or a side of vegetables, or a single recipe, or a whole plate of food such as a protein, starch, and vegetable and sauce. Or it can be like a whole 5-course meal with a appetizer, salad course, entree course, dessert course, and beverages. Or it could be represented as a food for any given period of time, whether that's a week or a month or a year, or even by meal period, say like breakfast, lunch, or dinner. They're basically the same kind of idea except scaled differently. So if you're doing a single item like a steak, you would have the cost of the steak divided by how much that steak sold for. If it's a whole recipe, what the recipe cost was divided by what you sold the recipe for. The 5-course meal would be like whatever you paid for the items in that 5-course meal divided by what you're charging for that 5-course meal. Or if it's a time period, the amount of food you bought during that time period and the amount of food sales you had for that time period. So food cost percentage is exactly what we just went over. It's the relationship between what you paid for that food and what you're selling that food for. A more complicated and accurate way of looking at it is involving your inventory. If you're doing an inventory, you are probably trying to find a dollar amount for that inventory. And the reason for that is so you can find a more accurate food cost percentage. So the more complicated formula that involves inventory is beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory divided by food sales. And basically that formula takes into account the food that you purchased that you haven't sold yet. So say you bought a bunch of food, you're sitting on a bunch of food, but you haven't sold that food yet. You need to take that into account if you want an accurate idea of what your food cost percent is. So most restaurants will want to keep their food costs between 28% and 35%. Most places I've worked, we want to keep it right around 30%. I was actually able to make bonus if I kept it at 30.5%. There are certain ways to control your food cost percent based on costing controls. That's beyond the scope of this video though. I'm just trying to kind of establish what food cost percent and selling price are. You can also think of food cost percent as it relates to the whole of the restaurant. So say you had a 30% food cost, that would lead 70% left for other items such as labor, utilities, rent, and profit. Food cost percent is basically the amount of money that you made and how much of that you spent on food. The lower the food cost, the better. Now I've worked in places where beverage is also rolled into that, or any kind of consumable item is part of my food cost percent. I would roll whatever you're putting into your purchases also needs to be part of your sales. So just keep that in mind if you want to keep them representative of each other. If you're including beverages in your food cost percent, then you need to include the beverages in your purchases, and you also need to include the beverages in your sales. You can also figure out your labor percent based on the same formula also. The amount of labor that you spent divided by your revenue. That'll get you your labor percent. So now on to selling price. Selling price can be expressed as, it's the amount that you paid for the food divided by your desired food cost percent, expressed in a decimal format. So say you spent $9 on some food, and you want to have a 30% food cost, you would take $9 divided by 0.3, and that would get you $30. That would be your selling price for that item. Now, other establishments may approach selling price differently. This is the best in my opinion. It's more of a holistic approach. You're looking at the big picture. The relationship between selling price, food cost percent, and food costs are all linked together. You can't change one without affecting the other. Just like how your food cost percentage is representative of your total sales, those are linked together as well. I believe it's the best method in determining a minimum price that you need to sell your food for to be sustainable. So no matter what scale you're looking at, whether you're trying to determine a selling price for one dish or you're trying to find out your food cost for an entire month, they are all basically the same formula, just at a different scale. Easy way to do it is just cover up one, and then the formula will kind of lead you through the rest. If you wanted to know your cost per portion, you would just cover that up with your thumb, selling price times food cost percent in a decimal format. If you want to know your selling price, you would cover that up with your thumb, and that would be cost per portion divided by food cost percentage in a decimal format. If you want to know your food cost percent, you would cover that up and you would have cost per portion divided by selling price. They're all representative of each other. They fit in together nicely. So no matter what scale you're trying to look at things, whether you're trying to figure out the cost of one item or if you're trying to figure out your food cost percentage of an entire period, you can use the triangle for whatever you need. So none of this matters if you're not tracking your numbers. You need to know what your food purchases are for that given period if you're going to be able to track what your food cost percent is, or you need to know what your food sales are for that given period. So keeping all your invoices, putting them in some sort of spreadsheet or some sort of database of some sort is necessary if you're going to be accurate in trying to determine what your food cost percent is and trying to figure out if your selling price is correct or not. Well, I hope this sheds some light on what food cost percentage is and how to determine a selling price. If you have any questions, just leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much.